Wacha tuanze na daktari atuambie mwaka mpya kuna kwaje, Daktari Aukot.
Mwanzo kabisa happy new year to everybody, happy new year to you, Bitok, and my fellow panelists. It's a new year and I'm hoping that it will be a different year from 2020. And but yesterday, after watching Joe Ageo's angle at I was a bit, I was actually depressed a little bit because Joe Ageo spoke for the 47 million Kenyans when he put this very good perspective about this man who goes to borrow money from a bank, builds lavish homes, his relatives walking in fancy suits around the villages, and he continues to borrow. He asks for moratorium to pay the loan, goes and borrows again. But that is actually a story of Kenya. That today, even as we start this new year talk, as we start the THETACKLE this year, we are starting with a 9 trillion debt, national debt. And you can imagine after this Jubilee government leaves office, maybe we'll be deeper and deeper in debt. Meaning, even if we've been given 6 months reprieve by the Paris Club to repay this debt. And one of the questions that Joe Ageo actually raised, which I think many Kenyans need to reflect upon, now that we are not able to pay this debt for the last, I don't know, number of years, what magic will happen for us to be able to pay it in 6 months? Let's look forward. The politics of succession 2022 is already on. President himself admits that people are stealing 2 billion every year. For me, it's a very sad thing coming from the head of state, person who controls all the machinery of government.
By the way, when did he count the 2 billion?
I don't know. And those are the details maybe he needs to tell us. Because one of the questions that also came to my mind, if he actually can confirm authoritatively that 2 billion is being stolen every day, then he must also know who is stealing this money and from where. And therefore do something about it. Of course, we are not new to the president, desperation. Sometimes back during corruption, when he had a corruption conference in State House, he actually asked, Wakenya mnataka nifanye nini? Meaning he actually has admitted this is a state of our affairs. So I'm hoping that this 2021 really will be different. We'll start off on a good ground, and I hope Kenyans will actually think positively and think about how to change the country, because I'm sure you can also see that the succession wars are already too much on our faces, that the number 2 person in this Jubilee administration who have put us into a 9 trillion debt, everybody is saying this is a guy to beat in 2022. Me, I don't know what magic that man will bring. Today he is deputizing actually 9 trillion debt. He's deputizing corruption. He's deputizing all the failed promises, the Jubilee laptop projects, everything. So this is the politics. We've been started off with the politics. And of course there is the nonsense called BBI. The BBI nonsense is already been allocated 14 billion of our taxpayers' money. 14 billion, Bitok. So we are talking about 9 trillion debt, but then there are people who are promoting a referendum, a useless referendum that's about tribalism, that's balkanizing this country, but it's a portion 14 trillion. So 14 billion rather. So I'm thinking that as we start this new year, honestly, I think Kenyans, we must have a brutal and honest conversation about our country, and we really have to come out and get involved, because if you are not, trust me, this political class that we have given the mandate will sink this country deeper, because they don't care. If Uhuru can admit 2 billion is stolen every year, every day, just do the mathematics. We are a very super rich country. Imagine if 2 billion is being stolen every day, multiply that by 365 days.
That's
in a year.
That's absolutely.
So Kenya, actually, we are a very, very rich country. So why is this wealth not changing the lives of Kenyans? As we go into this new year, talk, other countries, progressive nations who really care about their citizens, who care about their countries, are talking about vaccines. They're talking about mass vaccination of their nationals. Our children have been literally forced to go back to school. The Ministry of Education did not even give a directive to mass vaccinate teachers, the staff, and at least the children. We have got a very fragile, if any, healthcare system You know, the doctors, the clinicians, the nurses are already talking about strikes and all that. So really, we are starting this year with real issues. And I wish we can talk about issues and forget about the politics of 2022. Otherwise, if we proceed the way we are, we may probably not even have any Kenyan voting in 2022.
Tutakusha wote.
Tutakuwa tumekwisha wote.
But you see, the most interesting thing is the people, the team, there's a section of Kenyans or a section of politicians, the political class who have been saying that it's too early to campaign for 2022. I saw the other day they have all joined the ring of campaigning. They've been roaming around the city, so you can only can only hope.
When we come to the politics of Nairobi, because that's one of the things we must discuss. You know, sometimes I am surprised Kenyans are surprised with the kind of politics.
You're surprised Kenyans are surprised.
Yes, with the kind of politics, because we know that we've been treated to a certain narrative, certain political narrative in this country. Like right now, one of the dangers as we start this new year is that the country is being balkanized between the hustlers and those others. I don't know who those others are, and you can see the so-called hustlers, the have-nots, are cheering the people who are already super rich, and they ramming this narrative into them that we are the have-nots, we are the hustlers. Yet the people who are driving the narrative of the hustler nation, for example, made some promises to these hustlers almost 10 years ago. Nothing has changed. So I think, like I keep saying in previous conversations, perhaps there's something psychic about us Kenyans, especially when it comes to politics. We probably need to be psychoanalyzed, all of us, because there's something fundamental wrong in the way in which we go about our business as a nation. Because today we are talking about 70% unemployment rate in this country. We're talking about over 7 million small businesses collapsing last year because of the impacts of COVID-19. We're talking about a collapsed healthcare system, education system, technology, and all those things. But yet, when these so-called politicians who want to succeed President Uhuru and his government in 2022 come to you, it is the same Kenyans who are assembled even without masks. Let alone the fact that Jack Ma had given some free masks, but which disappeared somewhere. And these people will still be assembled. So who really is the problem in Kenya? Is the problem the minority politicians, or the problem is the majority Kenyans?
I think it should be the majority Kenyans, because we do the voting.
Exactly.
Anyway, all right. Wakili, Emmanuel Kibet, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you? Happy New Year.
Good to see you, sir. Happy New Year. Wewe na mgeni huko, karibishwa na daktari, yeye ndio mwenyeji na kuna kiti yake anajua mahali iko. Maybe I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Kibet. Thank you very much for inviting me alongside Dr. Aukot. As you say, this is my first time here. Thank you because of the good job. Thank you because of the analysis that you make daily. I think there's a lot of effect in terms of educating Kenyans on political consequences of their choice. And Dr. Aukot put it quite clear that maybe it's quite some time for us to look into ourselves, because democracy is an effect of majority having their way and minority having their say. So when the majority elect the politicians that we have in the day, and we all seem to have almost similar problems, where there is nothing unique about the kind of issues one Kenyan in Turkana, for instance, has with another Kenyan in the coast region of this country, which tells us that we all have common problems, as because of the kind of leaders that we choose. And to that extent, it's probably time that we analyze ourselves as voters on the kind of choices that we make as leaders. But when you look at democracy in itself, the philosophy of democracy is that people would vote their choice of leader through an electoral process. And when that happens, if the kind of leader that they choose is not the kind of leader that they immediately after choosing, they despise their leadership skills or style, that tells you that most likely it is probably the problem of the democratic process in terms of either lack of education amongst the voters. Because, during presidential elections and in any other elections, we have those people whom we would have given a higher pedestal in terms of, competence and ability to lead this country. But you must ask yourself, why would then why would the majority choose a certain leader and not the other one, regardless of their qualification to leadership skills? So I think it's something that we have to look into it. And as we gear up to 2022, which is next year, I think we expect to see so much about preferences, political preferences, and the consequences that we hope to learn from in the last 5 or 10 years that we've had the leadership in place. And I mean, we hope that we are able to make the right choices again. The democracy will, lead to a majority where we have a better choice in terms of leadership. But be that as it may, I mean, Bitok, it's all about the kind of choices that we have, because we really have to choose between what we have or amongst what we have.
Yeah. That's quite interesting. I think we'll not even be making a good choices again. I mean, trying to make a good choice for the first time. I don't know if we ever right in Kenya. I doubt.
But I think like Wakili is saying that, I mean, let's just be brutally honest. We deserve the kind of leaders that we elect. And when these leaders subject us to a state of suffering, like Kenyans are going through right now, we shouldn't really blame anybody else but ourselves. Because the failure of leadership is actually the failure of the kind of choices that we make. So it is really up to us. Do we interrogate ideas? Do we interrogate issues? Do we pick the best? Because now, if you look at, for example, even the debate towards amending the constitution, the intention is purely to accommodate individuals, not even majority, individuals from certain tribes. It is not the people from that community. Because like Wakili has said, our problems are common. Today, whether you are from Todonyanguko, northern Kenya, or in Lungalunga in Kwale, or Lamu, or Mpeketoni, or wherever, or even Gatundu here, where President Uhuru Kenyatta comes from, your problems are the same. Unemployment of the youth cuts across tribes. And it does not matter, for example, whether one of your own, like the narrative is being driven now, that we must be represented. I've seen, for example, certain individuals, and the common one I see is from I think, the Mulembe Nation. Every time you see, for example, someone like, and he's a good friend of mine, someone like Musalia Mudavadi speaks, or Wetangula, they will say it's time for Mulembe Nation to be in government. You wonder, okay, first of all, it's an individual within the community that actually makes to that particular position. And that individual, not a community. Not a community. And that individual is expected to be like the father figure of all the 44 ethnic groups in this country. And that the policies that this individual comes with under his or her administration must benefit all Kenyans in equal measure. And that is how you build a nation state. The moment you begin to balkanize and say, our tribe must be the next president. First of all, it's fallacious to say our tribe. It's not the entire tribe. It's an individual who actually takes oath of office to protect the constitution of the Republic of Kenya, which constitution is a culmination of the views of all Kenyans.
Yeah, for the three tribes.
Exactly. It's not a culmination of the views of one particular tribe. However popular as you may be, or you occupy a huge geographical location, it does not really matter. I mean, that document is our social contract between all of us. So when an individual takes oath of office and swears that to protect this constitution, it's for the benefit of all Kenyans. So we need to begin to debunk this narrative that one of our own has to be in power.
For us to feel good. Because let's go straight to Kapedo. I've seen your tweets yesterday. You're making some allegations against some guys. What is happening in Kapedo exactly? Is it political? Is it resource conflict? What is it exactly?
Kapedo is a cocktail of many issues, many problems. First of all, it begins with the failure of government to actually effect the rule of law. I come from Kapedo. I went to school in Kapedo. But the fact that government has been unable to effect the rule of law in Kapedo is a failure of government. Then there is the politics driven by some individuals who I'm not afraid to mention here. Professor Lonyangapuo, the current governor of West Pokot, Kamket, the MP for Tiati. They have been claiming that Kapedo belongs to the Pokot, even though there is no single Pokot that is resident in Kapedo. No single Pokot votes in Kapedo. In fact, I remember challenging Kamket in one of the sessions that me and him appeared. And I asked Kamket, if Kapedo is actually is in your constituency as you keep on saying, then how many votes did you get from Kapedo? Because there is no single polling station in Kapedo for Tiati. But That's one issue. So you have got tribal narrative being driven by certain lackluster political leaders who use Kapedo to pit Pokot against Turkana so that they can get elected. You know, and that's exactly what Kamket is. There's also the problem of the failure of the executive. If you recall, 2014, November 2014, about 25 soldiers, if my memory is correct, were killed in Kapedo. And President Uhuru himself flew actually there. And you know what he said? He only asked the Pokot to return the guns. The Wazes from the Pokot community actually confessed and told him, President, we are very sorry. It's our boys who have done this. We will return the guns. And all the president was interested in was return of the guns. Not to ask the Wazes, now that you have confessed, it is your boys who actually killed police officers. 25 police officers together with KPRs then. Okay? So, the president should have insisted, as you bring back the guns, bring back those boys. And you remember some of the media personnel, journalists, were actually the ones collecting the guns. They were told, go and collect a G3 here, a AK-47 there, and actually returned the guns. But the criminals went scot-free after killing 25 police officers. The other problem in Kapedo is the discrimination by government. And here I'll put blame directly on CS Matiang'i. Last year or year before, Matiang'i decided to disarm, went on this disarmament process. He successfully disarmed the Turkana community in Kapedo, in Lomelo, Napeitom, and those areas, and part of the Turkana South, all the way up to Kainuk. He disarmed them. He took away the guns belonging to KPR. These are government officers. These are government staff. They are given these guns because government realizes they are unable to effectively give protection to all Kenyans wherever they may be. So it cleverly came up with this idea that let's have KPR, also Kenya Police Reservice, among the community. And they are the ones who normally respond in good time. So Matiang'i disarmed the Turkana side successfully, but he never disarmed the Pokot. Last week, there was an allegation that some Turkana boys had stolen some goats belonging to the Pokot. Do you know what happened? It was so dramatic, you won't believe it. 60 Pokots, well armed, went and surrounded the GSU camp, the RDU camp in Kapedo, for over, I think, 6 hours, and they demanded return of their goats. I personally spoke to Inspector of Police Minor, who is in charge. And he actually confirmed, yes, these guys came and surrounded the camp. Before they left, they vandalized Kapedo Mixed Secondary School. They vandalized the hospitals. All the images are there. The GSU was only forced to go and evacuate young people. So government, there is no government in the northern part of Kenya. It's actually the Kenya of the North, as I choose to call it. Then there is other fundamental problem in Kapedo. It's about resources on Mount Silale. Did you know, for example, that Mount Silale probably has the highest deposits of geothermal in the entire world? And that is the bone of contention, which is why government, fraudulently created administrative unit called Silale in Tiati, which never exists there. And there are people who are interested in this GDC. I have mentioned in the past that Gideon Moi is one of those people. The Moi family is the one that's actually interested in the GDC development in Mount Silale. And because they are part and parcel of the problem this country has had historically, so nobody will touch them. So they are using a backing dog like Kamket to actually do this incitement. The Suguta Valley is very rich in minerals, including geothermals. This is the interest. So Kapedo is being the people in Kapedo are being victimized because there are people who want to control the resources in Kapedo. Then there is another criminal element in relating to Kapedo, the falsification of administrative boundaries. If you go to the original map, the boundary between Kapedo and Baringo was actually in a place called Kanakoko, I think close to Chamalingot area. This was fraudulently pushed up to the bridge where the bridge is. They allege now that is part of the boundary between Kapedo and Tiati or Baringo, Pokot. But you see, it has never stopped people like Kamket, Lonyangapua, and other warlords around that area from pushing the narrative that Kapedo, Aptulomelo is in. And today we have chiefs from the Turkana community who actually report to Lodwa because that's where they report. So that's what I'm telling you. Kapedo is a cocktail of all activities, but fundamentally is the failure of government. Government is not present in that part of Kenya.
So there are things we've listed: politics, incitement, resource conflicts, and you feel there's discriminative administration in terms of security administration.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to disarmament. Because every time, for example, you give the Turkanas, and I've said this and I will repeat it again, if today, honestly, you just armed the Turkanas to defend themselves and defend their land, because there is no government. The law allows us to self-defend ourselves. If today you gave the Turkanas those guns back for the Kenya Police Reservice, not bandits, just to defend the community, trust me, the Pokot bandits are cowardly. The Turkanas will not even need a month. They will chase them out of this town. Actually, they probably end up in Upe County in Uganda, where they originally came from.
All right, Wakili. Yes. Even as you see, there's an argument that I brought yesterday, and it's about historical injustice, economic injustice against certain communities. Because you could imagine if these people were empowered, if we had schools, if we had roads, if we had all these things, what can we have here? Why is it that we don't fight where resources there are, or where there is civilization infrastructure? That was the argument that I had yesterday. As much as we are, of course, getting some other conversation from EKURU, who is a local there, I keep wondering, why is it that it's only the areas that people are poor and kind of disempowered economically that people fight? Is it kind of a rebellion against historical injustice? Like, okay, guys, you keep taking things from us. You saw, for instance, when there was oil in Gamia 1, the Turkanas were coming up in arms and they were saying, if you're not going to have a conversation about us this time, then even the mobility of trucks, the logistics and all that, there's no truck which is going to get out of this place without oil.
That's what I was saying.
That was actually my argument.
One of the fundamental problems, even before Akili comes on board, is the absence of government. Okay. Where you have got an absent government, it will be jungle law in application.
But you see, one of the things, poverty breeds, amongst others, intolerance. And in a situation like Dr. EKURU puts that, is a local in the science, you have some factual background synthesis of that area. And one of the things that we have to look at, it's not the first time that we have such a challenge in Kenya. We had Mungiki, we had the About Land Defense Forces, and the government dealt with those two, security.
Even Al-Shabaab, NFD.
Yeah, which is still, a problem, and the government is, putting quite a lot of resources in dealing with that. But we have a situation like this in Kapedo where, the residents of Kapedo and Kenyans at large can see that there's some sort of bias in terms of how the government is trying to deal with this problem. And maybe it's time that, I was also thinking that maybe the government should work with the locals, professionals maybe, and the county governments to form some sort of regional reconciliation commissions, so that they can, as the Secretary is putting it, there are quite a lot of resources there. So maybe a reconciliation committee amongst all these counties and the communities there, aided by their professionals, could come up with lasting solutions. Because I think when we go a year in terms of, taking away guns and asking locals to return the guns, and then in 2 years, they have the guns, somehow they already, they get to procure the guns and they go back to the battle and they kill each other. So maybe it's time that there is a permanent solution that cuts across all the communities. And one of the first things that they could do to actually, improve the economy of that area and the locals is to have some sort of a reconciliation commission amongst those people that can be able to suggest to both the county government and the national government on a manner in which they can create resources, create jobs, build schools, and exploit the natural resources there, so that maybe there's going to be a lasting solution. Because, when people are idle and poor, they're bound to think along the lines of, fighting for their resources, cattle rustling. I saw Honorable Moses Kuria calling it a Pokot terrorism. So you see, there are different perspectives as to what really is the cause of the problem, and the best medium to establish the real cause of the problem would be the government. Of course, working with the locals and dealing with the problem. I don't think the government is unable to deal with it, as it were. So I think it's just a question of the willingness and the dedication of the government to deal with this issue once and for all.
But by the way, just for the record, some of the richest people in this country, actually the millionaires, are actually from the pastoralist communities. If today you are to actually quantify or to monetize their wealth in terms of the cows they have, the camels, whatever, all the cattle that they have, these are actually millionaires. So again, I will differ slightly with Wakili here. They're actually not idle. I think the fundamental problem, the way I see it, is the absence of government, or a government that is disinterested in equitably developing all the regions of Kenya. For example, just in terms of infrastructure, you mentioned oil.
Yeah.
When oil was discovered in Turkana in 2012, we went into a negotiation with the government, and I remember drafting a tripartite agreement between the County Council of Turkana then, Talo Oil, and the national government. And one of the issues that we put on the table as a community of the Turkana, we asked a fundamental question. If this oil was, for example, discovered in central Kenya, or in Nyanza, or some part of Rift Valley, say central Rift Valley, or Nakuru, I'm sure the community around there will be an equitable division of revenue. And we said, listen, we gave examples of other countries in the world, for example, Canada, where there's a lot of mining. And we said that in Canada, when the Canadian government discovers, for example, a natural resource, the first thing that they do is they complete what is called a community partnership agreement with the local community, the Indians. In Australia, once they discover a resource, the first thing they do is they sign an agreement with the Aboriginal, and that way you actually inculcate it. Because if this resource is found among my community, why shouldn't I be the beneficiary? Mm-hmm. And this brought up the debate around, for example, the fact that for many decades in Kenya, cash crop farming like tea, coffee, and the rest was grown in certain parts of this country, and they benefited immensely from that cash crop farming. So why can't the oil, for example, benefit the Turkana? Why can't the natural resource, which is rich in Suguta Valley, benefit the Turkana? Why can't the geothermal, prospection in Mount Silale benefit the Turkana? Because we know if this was, for example, found among the Luo community, the Luya or the Kikuyus, it will be a different debate. And you can see this discrimination of government even among the people of coast. And governance over a long period of time. So I still go back to the fundamental question: how present is government of Kenya in each and every part of this republic? It is absent. It is absent, which is why, education, for example, is disrupted in that part of northern Kenya, say Mandera, Wajir, and the rest, because government does not care, does not build the proper infrastructure. I mean, even if today, honestly, you have to quantify the infrastructure that has been built by this Jubilee government in the last 10 years, you can for sure say without any fear of hesitation that it's been concentrated on certain parts of this country. That is discrimination, and this is what builds bile between communities, between regions. And this is what actually brings division in our country. And it takes you back to the fundamental question of leadership of a country. If the leadership of a country is wrong, there will be no prosperity. So leadership is supposed to steer a country to a certain level of prosperity. This isn't happening in our country today. The choreography is about bringing a couple of tribes together. We control power. Theft goes on. Those communities benefit. And again, like Wakili Kibet said earlier, go to Kibra, Madare, go to Korogosho. You will find all tribes in this country suffering, masafaras, in that same environment. Yet you will hear during electioneering time ati mtu wetu lazima ingie bunge. Hii ujinga sijui tutawacha lini kama Wakenya.
Even as you look also at the Kapedo issue, there is also another issue that really come up. Security officers are continuing to die.
Yes.
They've been killed, and there seems to be having a problem, a real difficulty in operating in that terrain. It has almost exposed underbelly of our security forces, like they are not really equipped. Last time they were there, they were also overpowered by the
But I'll just give you an example. Last week, you have 60 armed bandits surrounding a GSU camp in Kapedo. And I remember speaking to Chief Inspector Minor, and he was telling me, EKURU, what could we have done? You can see these 60 guys. These are guys who are ready to die and willing. And they are surrounded, basically surrounded.
Is the government admitting that they were unable to deal with the bandits?
Completely. That's an admission.
Yeah. And now, Daktari, I might be forced to ask him a few questions.
Yeah.
You see, much as security is a function of the national government, and really is solely the function of, the role of the national government to ensure security, what would be the role of the county government in terms of resource mobilization? Because to some level that would, have some positive effect in terms of...
Yeah, you see, Wakili, let's go back to now the constitution, the matters legal. When we wrote this constitution in 2010, there are very important articles of this constitution that can actually answer your question. Let's start from Article 6, I think Article 6 of Article 3 of the constitution, the devolution of functions and powers. It says there has to be consultation and cooperation between the two levels of government.
Yes.
And that national organs must be devolved to each and every part of the Republic of Kenya. And that did not make any exemptions, including security, including defense. It's a national organ. But if there is a need in one part of the level of the government, it must be devolved to each and every part of the Republic of Kenya. Now, how will that happen? We go to Article 187 of the Kenya Constitution. Article 187 talks about transfer of functions between two levels of government, and that transfer can only happen if that function can be best realized in that one level, or effectively realized in that one level of government. And that transfer is not just in vain. It must come under an agreement. So you send an agreement between the national government and the county government to say, okay, there is a serious insecurity problem in Kapedo and the Suguta Valley. National government will now sign a contract to transfer the security element, but under a contract, to the county government of Turkana. And that transfer comes with resources. That's what the Constitution says. And then how do we do that? There is a cooperation and partnership between the two levels of government again, under Article 189. So it is clearly defined, Wakili, how this thing can happen. So it is stupid and mediocre of anybody, or someone even like Matiang'i, to be saying, I control the national security docket in Nairobi, but your own police officers, GSUs,
in Kapedo are admitting to defeat by the bandits.
And are being killed, not just admitting, they're actually being killed like dogs by these bandits. And you are refusing to cooperate effectively with the county government of Nanok, and tell Josephat Nanok, the governor of Turkana, listen, you know the local terrain, you know your people, how can we effectively help you this? We will transfer this element, it will come with the resources, and then we can end this problem. So therein lies a solution, even in our own law, but they are not doing it. It's shameful when actually police, we have normalized this thing of killing, like I was giving you a history, 2014, 25.
Policemen.
You remember which year was it? When again, about 42.
2012, I think it was 2012, 42 officers. In 2012, 42 officers, if I'm not wrong. 2012?
Were killed in Baragoi area.
Yeah,
yes,
Baragoi.
yes.
Yeah.
Again, there was no final solution to it. So we have actually normalized, and government has admitted we are unable to be present in some of these parts of the country, and the Constitution has given them a solution: cooperate and consult with the county government. You can transfer that function, but under a contract. You don't lose your power as a minister or as a national government when we say let's covenant on how we are going to address this problem.
And the government has, in fact, it has done that with the Nairobi,
Exactly.
Nairobi County.
There's a fantastic question, Wakili, you brought. Why is it possible to transfer functions of Nairobi County government to end Nairobi Metropolitan Service, and not possible to transfer some functions of the national government to Turkana so that they can address security?
And locally. And the secretary, somebody was commenting and saying, these are guys, the guys who are fighting with the police, are guys who have grown up with guns. You're born and you have a gun waiting for you. You have mastered the territory. You've been roaming there the whole time. A police officer is brought from Nairobi overnight to go and fight people in a new territory.
But that's why I thought the genius of our government was to come up with this idea of the Kenya Police Reservists. The Kenya Police Reservists are actually locals.
Yeah, they're local.
Who are resident. Yeah. They know also the terrain. They even know these people. But let me give you a small story. In 2007, this issue of Kapedo and boundary between the Turkana and the Pokot came up in 2007. And then Hassan Nur, I think then he was the provincial commissioner for Rift Valley. He actually called all the politicians in that part of Turkana then. He called the professionals, and I was one of those professionals from the Turkana community and the Pokot community. We met at the Waterback Hotel in Nakuru. Do you know what shocked me? Is that we even had our own paramount chiefs. I remember there was Paramount Chief Musa Ngitiang from Loima. There was Paramount Chief Lochakai from Pokot side. And I remember these people. Those chiefs stood up, and I remember Musa Ngitiang, the late Musa Ngitiang, telling Lochakai, who is also a Paramount Chief from the Pokot, they spoke in Turkana and Pokot. These guys know each other. Then we professionals said, okay, you know what? Let's watch this. So this was started explaining how the demarcation of the boundary happened during George Whitehouse, who was then the district magistrate in charge of Rift Valley, because he's the one who was assigned the demarcation of these boundaries. So these Wazes will speak to each other and say, Chakai, you remember me when we were small boys? You know, we came with George Whitehouse, you said this is Pokot, this is Turkana, tukaweka biko napa. Then it was like a relay, all the way up to Kapedo, to Saburu. So, and government knows. So remember, we asked Nur Asa Nur. You've heard Wazes. You've heard how the boundary was being demarcated back in the days. What do you want of us? We actually came up with a document, an agreement in EKURU. And we said, government, now it's up to you to go and follow and enforce this. Wazes have spoken themselves. They actually even know each other. Coming from Kapedo, Bitok, and Wakili, part of my family is actually Pokot, and we know these families from Pokot, from the other side. We know them. You know, the Kitilit family is a family that grew up with the Aukot family, Mount Salale area. You know, so we know them. What has happened later on, mercenaries have actually been sponsored by these warlords like Kamket and Lonyangapua, who are pushing for this supremacy battle that that certain lands in Turkana belongs to them. But even for Lonyangapua and Kamkete, and I really sympathize with them, they are being used because there are powerful people behind them who want to exploit these resources that I've spoken of in Mount Salale and Suguta Valley, but they are using them as conduits. If you ask them, and one time I want you to invite Asman Kamama to your show.
I'll invite him.
Invite Asman Kamama. I'll give you his number. Asman Kamama is the former MP for now Tiati.
Yes.
It was then Baringo East. Asman Kamama grew, partly even grew in my family, because he was a friend. He actually became a friend of my elder brother David. They went to school together in Kapedo Primary School. And Asman Kamama was from this other side of Pokot. So he went to school there. Asman Kamama will tell you the truth that the Pokot in Wachokozi, Kapedo squarely belongs in Turkana. And he will never admit to the fact that Pokot can claim Turkana or Kapedo or Lomelo area. He knows these places very well. He's stayed even with my family, my brother, when school closed. So there are Pokots who can actually tell you the truth. The people who are propagating this narrative are pure criminals and they are bandits, and government has been unable to deal with them, including the guys who surrounded the GSU camp last week in Kapedo and killed a GSU officer.
All right. Wakili, picking up from Nairobi County, the takeover. What are the legalities and the illegalities? You know, Nairobians have been denied an opportunity to elect their own governor. I'm not a lawyer, but I think na chungulianga kitabu za zingine kidogo constitution. I think the only time we can have a deputy governor is when we have a governor who has appointed a deputy governor.
Yeah, you see, that question, there has many opinions in that, to that view, as there are lawyers or anyone, if you care to ask. But I think there's a close correlation between that question and the Kapedo issue, because I will tell you one thing. The national government introduced NMS because they thought or believed that the county government was failing. And through a cooperation agreement that was purportedly signed between the governor then and the county government, that shows you what Dr. Terry was saying, that if in the views of the Turkana people and the counties within there, even in their own view, the national government has failed, they should prompt the national government to sign a cooperation agreement and assign these particular roles that they think the government has failed to the county governments. Well, there may be a lot of legalities to follow, but I think that would inform the precedent that the national government has set with Nairobi County. So I would, in my view, the Nairobi takeover is, I think it's a political expediency, because it started with the NMS, where the national government, according to Sonko, he said he didn't sign, or that he signed under influence to transfer some factions to the national government. And then subsequently we saw a situation where the governor, Sonko, was not in very good relationship with the now introduced Nairobi Metropolitan Service.
You called him Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, he called him names. And then subsequently we saw a situation where Sonko became very intolerant and refused or declined to sign legislative mandates to transfer money to the NMS. Consequently, we saw a situation where Sonko is now arrested and taken to court, is charged, and is asked to step aside. The legality of how Sonko was now impeached. You know, there are challenges to that, and Sonko himself challenged that in court as to the process and whether due process was followed. The court is yet to, decide on that. But now, when the governor was impeached, I think the operationalization of Article 182, crystallized, where we have a situation where governor has been impeached, there is no deputy governor, and by operation of Article 182, the speaker was now acting as the governor. You see, the law therefore mandates the speaker to act as a governor for a maximum of 60 days. And it mandates now the IEBC to conduct an election within 60 days. So at the time when Sonko was impeached, and by operation of law, there was no deputy governor then. And as a result, the speaker became the acting deputy, the acting governor for 60 days. It prompted the IEBC, in fact, to gazette the vacancy, of that office. It prompted the IEBC to start preparing for elections. It even gave a date of the Nairobi governor elections. And then now, shortly after that, and this is where the political, coup took place, is we are now seeing an introduction of someone who, according to the speaker, says that this person was nominated by the outgoing governor as a deputy governor. And the only reason that maybe Kananu had not been sworn in as the deputy governor was because of a court case. Again, mysteriously, we saw that court case being withdrawn and Kananu being vetted. Now, the committee that vetted Kananu did so within an hour, made a report to the county assembly within another hour. The speaker was, surprisingly able to convene the county assembly to look into the report, adopt the report, and approve the nomination of Kananu. Immediately, we assume, Kananu was sworn in as the deputy governor. And shortly after that, I think if there wasn't for a few challenges, they would have, gone ahead to swear Kananu as the governor. But we saw where a court order has now stopped the Kananu as the governor of Nairobi. So my views are that, I don't think it is right. From my own reading of Article 182, I don't think that was procedural. I don't think it was lawful. But we understand that the matter is now in court. And I think we will all see, to the decision of the court in terms of how it interprets. But in my own view, I don't think that was lawful.
All right. Dr. Ari, do you still think there is anything, I hear every day to people talking about the legal aspect, it is illegal, it's not illegal. Do you think there's still anything legal and illegal in this country? It seems everything is legal.
I go back to my first point, that I am surprised Kenyans are surprised at the way things are happening. Actually, I'm even shocked. Kenyans are actually surprised. Because like Wakili has ably put it, but I have a different perspective. I agree with him to some extent, but I will also give my perspective. Now, there are two things. We need to separate two things here. There is the politics part of all these shenanigans. There's the politics part of it. And we've been treated to this lackluster politics since the independence of this country. It's actually become our operational philosophy. The politics of convenience, expediency, tribal politics, politics about resources. That's one. Actually, it's like Kenya is being run by two regimes.
At the same time?
At the same time. There is a political regime and there is the legal regime. Unfortunately, in our context, the political regime has overpowered the legal regime. So that however much we complain and throw tantrums around the fact that the lack of compliance with the constitution, the political regime, because of the nature and character of our politics, has actually rendered the legal regime almost nugatory. Which is why even this president and this administration have disobeyed many court orders for the longest time. They have disobeyed the constitution. Presidents are refused to, for example, swear in the 41 judges up to now. No reason given. They have refused. They have actually refused even to respect this constitution. For example, in the creation of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, a fundamental provision of the constitution that was offended is Article 10. The requirement that there has to be public participation when you are creating, for example, an entity or an organ in the governance of a country, especially within the context of devolution or the context of the constitution. That never happened. This same government created an animal, some nonsense called BBI, Building Bridges Initiative. There was no consultation. This was an agreement between two individuals who called themselves political brothers and what they are calling shared prosperity. The people of Kenya were never involved. They are now drumming it down our throats. So that is the politics of this country. And until we change the politics of this country, and like Wakili earlier on alluded to, it is also about us, the people of Kenya, now deciding to change the character and nature of our politics. So that politics must now become subservient to the legal framework. Because even the election itself, though it's a political process, but it is legally regulated. How do you elect leaders? There's the constitution, there are acts of parliament, and all that. Now let's go to the law. So I'm not agreeing with the way the politics, the way the politics is playing out in Nairobi County and the way it's playing out in Kenya. It is bad politics. It's bad politics because we, the people of Kenya, are responsible for electing these politicians who have no respect for the constitution, who have no respect for the rule of law. Let's go to the legality, the legal issues. And this is where I slightly differ with other people who say that Kananu is not properly in office. At the time of nominating Kananu, was she nominated by a substantive governor of Nairobi County? The answer is a resounding yes. Somebody rushed to court to stop the vetting of Kananu as the deputy governor. Now that going to court, or the failure of the county assembly to approve or reject her at that time, did not invalidate the nomination of Kananu by a substantive governor into the office of deputy governor, whether she had taken it or not at the time. Okay? So let's settle that issue first, that Kananu was properly nominated. But we are never given the opportunity during our vetting to establish whether is she a person of competent, is she competent enough, does she have capabilities. That opportunity was never given to Kenyans because the county assembly was not able to vet her at the time because somebody went to court. And that process is still legal. But of course, conveniently the politics kicked in. When Sonko was impeached and removed from office, the legality of Kanana's nomination was not invalidated. It's still a legal issue. And it was before a court of competent jurisdiction. Now the petitioner later on went and said, no, I'm withdrawing my case. That withdrawal paved the way for Kananu's vetting, whether it was a magical that within an hour she was vetted. Of course, now that is the politics of expedience happened, but vetting happened nonetheless. And that's why, again, I go back to the question, why are Kenyans surprised the vetting was even within an hour? I think the swearing was almost immediately.
After 2 hours.
So again, why are we surprised? Because this is the politics we have subjected ourselves into. And by the way, even within the law, again, within the law, there is actually no time frame within when you must be vetted and then be sworn in. I don't think there are those timelines. Maybe I may not have read the County Government Act in terms of, Wakili can remind me. But, so, that withdrawal of the case, and as Wakili here will agree, law abhors vacuum, you know? And let's also be critical of ourselves here. Why is it now, we are saying, oh, this was expedient. The nomination of Kananu was expedient. For 3 years, Nairobi County government did not have a deputy governor. And we are okay with it. Yeah? The same Jubilee government was okay with it. So hata sisi pia tuache kujifanya bana. Kama tulikubali county government of Nairobi to be without a deputy governor for 3 years, and we never reprimanded Sonko, we never impeached Sonko at that time. Sonko now was impeached after the magic of NMS came in, and because he refused, as Wakili Hebli says, he refused to comply with certain things. So in my view, the nomination of Kananu was proper by a substantive government. Now that there is no governor, and we need to make sure that the county government of Nairobi has leadership. That's why I think, under the principle of necessity, or the convention of necessity, it was necessary for the county government of Nairobi to expeditiously, magically, or within an hour and within 2 hours, vet this lady and put her as a deputy governor. Okay.
Secretary, I would like to know, what are your views? Because when, at the time that the governor was impeached, and there was a vacuum, and as you have said that law abhors vacuum, the speaker then was appointed, by operation of law became the acting governor, and was even sworn in as acting governor. How can you reverse the operation of Article 182 to now have a properly vetted and nominated deputy governor when the speaker has become an acting governor, and the natural consequence, according to the Article 182, would be that there be an election of governor.
You know, Akili, in my humble view or interpretation of the Constitution, all these processes were happening concurrently or in tandem with each other. Kananu was still fighting for the fact that I was properly nominated, whether there's a deputy governor or not. I was properly nominated. Please allow that process of nomination to go on. And part of allowing that process of nomination is when now the political expediency kicked in. The petitioner withdraws the petition. The county assembly now vets Kanana. So which means now there is an opportunity that we have a leader in the county government, a deputy governor. She is sworn in. So what does Mbutura do? Whether it was political expediency or not, it's not really reversing Article 182. He's saying, okay, now that there's a deputy governor properly vetted by the county assembly, but it is the county assembly that actually, once there's that position, vets the deputy governor. It's the county assembly that actually installed her as a deputy governor. So what business does Mbutura now have to hang on to the acting governorship when there's already a deputy governor by law, by constitution? So whether it was expedient or not, and we can speculate that he had to resign. Once he resigned, then it paved way for Kananu to take over as the governor of Nairobi. And by the way, this is our politics. Yes. This is our political bed. We made it, we sleep in it. I'm not saying it's necessarily a comfortable bed. It's not slumberland.
but the consequences of our choices.
It's the consequences of our choices.
You see the way there are so many divergent views about this issue is the same way you've seen in court as well. One judge has decided, you know what, the process has to go on. And then subsequently thereafter, the court has also stalled the swearing of the governor.
But you can see the anomaly, Wakili. You have a county assembly whose action has not been challenged in vetting Kananu. Okay, first, you have a petitioner who removes this case from court. And this is where the challenge remains, even for Mbutura. He has removed the case. What does that mean? The county assembly can now go on with its function, with its constitutional mandate.
That was challenged.
But you see, nobody stopped it. And then she was sworn in. Once she was sworn in now, it will be a misnomer that once you have a deputy governor, by dint of a mandate of the county assembly in place, you cannot proceed with the election of a governor, because the law requires once there is a deputy governor, that governor then must assume office. And therefore Mbutura, to some extent, arguably, and maybe this is an argument for legal scholars to explore, had no choice but to resign, because he cannot hold on to acting as a governor when there is a deputy governor. And therefore the election also of a governor cannot go on, because now there is a deputy governor who is able to actually ascend to that office of governor.
I think
there's been that argument. There's been that argument that actually Kanana, as you pick it up, Kanana is preparing the way for a handshake preferential.
With who?
Dennis Waweru. I had that.
Well, I saw that.
How will Dennis Waweru?
Well, let's look at it this way. Now, Kananu becomes governor. Okay, let's theorize it. Yes. Let's have it at the theory level. Now, Kananu becomes governor.
But there's also the other argument that what's her name? Igathe. Was actually
never resigned. He
resigned.
But then again, instead of going for Kanana, they would have then gone for Igathe. It would have been a better option. But anyway, this is the argument, and this is the conspiracy theory that Kanana is coming in to hold the old brief for the system. Now, after she ascends as governor, appoints Dennis Waweru, who has been blessed as an unchair candidate for Nairobi earlier. If we had a by-election, at that time, he was going to run as governor.
Then she resigns.
So he comes in, picks this guy as a governor, resigns, and goes back to become a CEC, where she had been vetted to be anyway earlier. And now Waweru appoints a NASA or an ODM guy as this deputy, and life goes on.
Well, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, because I'm even aware that in part of that choreography, there's a friend of mine who I will not mention here, who is interested in the governorship of Nairobi, and he was basically approached and told, we want you to be a decoy governor, so that Margaret Wanjiru becomes the governor with Dennis, not Dennis, with Jonathan Mweke as the deputy governor. So this friend of mine refused to say, no, I'm not going to be a decoy. The whole thing was correct. That's why ODM did not want to fill in candidate.
Well, the story is that they were negotiating for a deputy governor position, because in any case, Sonko was the Jubilee candidate who was then governor. And so the abstract, political theory is that once Kananu is sworn in as governor, she will then appoint Dennis Waweru as deputy governor. Subsequently, she would resign and, leave Dennis Waweru as governor. And then Dennis Waweru would then now appoint or nominate a deputy governor from the, the handshake political coalition.
But we talk. Let's bring in another perspective here, which is very important. The importance of the city of Nairobi. And if you compare the city of Nairobi, say, with Johannesburg and other countries, you expect that the city of Nairobi will be managed in such a way that it can compete with London, New York, and many other world capitals out there. But who have we entrusted to manage this city? It
goes back to democracy. The kind of choices.
Well, but also, it's not just democracy.
We are sitting on our blisters.
It's not just democracy. It is, for me, also the problem with the so-called working or middle class. Nairobi County controls about 60% of the GDP of this country. It is the home of probably the most elite in Kenya. The people who consume services such as good roads, electricity, garbage collection, and all that. But we are all sitting on the fence, and all we are doing is just lamenting and saying, analyzing this politics. And we are not getting involved to make sure that we get a city that can compete with New York, with London, with Paris, with Berlin, with Joburg or Cape Town and the rest. That we actually have a world-class capital. For me, I see that as one of the fundamental problems we have in Nairobi. That the people who are actually the consumers of the services, who ought to consume the best services in this city, are actually fence-sitters and just curious onlookers on what's happening in Nairobi.
Also, maybe because they are not the majority, to make make the numbers of electing their preferred person to be the governor. And there have been arguments that maybe Nairobi County should not have been made a county for political appointments. Elections where we have a governor to be elected by the people. Maybe it should. Maybe we should constitutionalize NMS.
And
it remains as it is now.
What benefit will we derive? Let's just explore that. Whether you made it a county government or a city or a metropolitan, what will be the benefit if we still allow this kind of political shenanigan to exactly.
But you see, that was still an election process where we elected councillors and the councillors elected the mayor.
And actually the councillors elected themselves now as a mayor.
Yeah, and then you see now that would still be bring a political angle.
Let me challenge you a little bit there. Even right now as we speak, Nairobi County government is actually an invalid, if I can use that example. It is sick somewhere. What is operational in Nairobi County government now is NMS, which is appointed by the president. Yeah? Yes. So why isn't NMS giving us some magics? Look, I noticed they are trying to clean up the CBD and the rest. But the CBD of Nairobi is not where the majority of Kenyans live. I want to see, for example, this new face Nairobi in Kawangware, in Umoja, in Donholm, all these other areas. And that's the only way we can actually build a Nairobi that we can say we all belong. We can actually build cities within a city. Look at the state of roads, for example, in Kilimani, Lavington, Westlands. Pathetic. But we are concentrating on a very small. Nairobi, the way I see it, is a battle for resources, control of resources. If you look at, for example, the transfer of services, look at the services that were transferred. It basically left Nairobi County government as a shell.
Yeah, which again, boils into a political, influence to. It's a selfish mechanism to control the resources amongst the politicians. And you say something about, you see, the threshold that someone in Korogosho or someone in Kibera places upon a leader to elect is way lower, and it's upon the basics of what they do not have, as opposed to someone who probably lives in Kilimani, Lavington, and the likes. Because someone in Kibera who do not want to elect Sonko because during his tenure, he was able to place a tank, at his convenience, his or her convenience. Someone in Kapedo would say, we have never had a toilet for the last 50 years. For the first time, we have a public toilet built by Sonko. So those are the thresholds that citizens in those areas would place upon electing a leader. And those, in my view, constitute the majority. So when we have, the elite of the society who might have, in fact, the bigger picture, as you said, to make Nairobi a competitive city as comparative to London and the rest. Whereas we have that particular view, we also have this view of people in a society who place a very low threshold based on basics on who they should elect as governor. You see, that brings an imbalance.
But and see, Wakili, that's why for me, we cannot just stop there. We have to challenge this narrative. Otherwise, we'll have to then accept the wisdom of Plato, who said that one of the consequences of refusing to participate in politics is that you'll be governed or ruled by your inferiors. and I think for me, then we must admit then, let the inferiors take their day. But I think for me, I believe that we can actually challenge these dominant narratives. I mean, 2 years ago, I started an initiative called Punguza Mizigo, Kenya. Of course, they laughed off at me. Some said, Turukana, hauna pesa, you cannot achieve this. But look, if you believe in an idea, again, if you believe strongly in an idea, like Stan Lee said when he was inventing Spider-Man, that if you believe in an idea so strongly, please don't allow any idiot to talk you out of it. And I think for me, it is time has come for us, the so-called elite in this country, the middle class in this country, to actually show leadership.
Right.
And we need to challenge this narrative and say, no, our constitution in chapter 6 says we must have a certain type and character of leaders. And let's champion it. I mean, let's not accept and sit and accept this thing, because if you do, we live with these consequences. I think and I keep on saying, if you don't fix this country, whether you live in the leafy suburbs of this country or not, one day, the majority, the have-nots, will storm those leafy suburbs. You can kill a few, but you will not kill everyone.
And they love you for dinner.
Someone has exploited that philosophy, and we now have a hustler versus the dynasty, political narrative. The eventualities of, the eventuality of that narrative.
And actually, it's the right house.
Like Joe Ageo said in their show yesterday, I actually cry for this country. I feel very bad for this country, because even if we work hard here and maybe make ourselves some money and live somewhere, the majority of our people are actually languishing and poor and all that. It became danger for us, because at some point it will be survival of the fittest. Well, whether you have millions in banks or not, and then hell breaks down, you may not even have the time by then to go and withdraw your millions. And for me, I keep on giving this example, Wakili. I've been to refugee camps in many, many parts of this world. I've met generals, top-notch lawyers, lining up for relief food from World Food Program, because the system in the country broke down.
It's not working.
They became refugees.
All right. Even as we wrote the conversation, there's something I noticed, and it looks like nothing really ever changes in the way, however much we change these people. I think the only thing that the new ingredient that we have in the metropolitan is the cinema. It's the PR around it. But otherwise, the thinking is still the same. When you move around, you see a tanker of Mike Sonko rescue team and an MMS tanker also carrying water. I would expect NMS, we should have a different conversation. Let's have piped water, for instance, for once.
That would be a permanent
instead, yes. I mean, that's what I'm telling you. The only thing, I think the only difference there is in NMS and Sonko, they are all the same psychology, because it's all a political con game for the people.
And you see, we have allowed the politicization of our basic entitlements, basic rights. When a leader comes and says, "Ntawaletea maji,"
we appreciate the water when we get it all right.
It's a basic right. We should be telling them, no, don't campaign on basic rights, Bana. Those are our basic rights. Tell us how probably you can create jobs and stuff like that, or a healthcare rollout healthcare system, so that anybody in a dispensary somewhere in Kenya can actually be tested for COVID without necessarily coming to Nairobi hospital and spending $100, 10,000 US Kenya. So we have.
That's not going to happen anytime soon. Anyway, as we wrote the conversation, Bungala Mwenyenchi Kowazi 0779-800-010 or 0779-800-010. You can call in and contribute to the conversations. Now, let's move to the next frontier, even as we head to Kafunga. BBI. Yesterday, the signatures were published on IEBC website. Actually, it's 1,000 what pages? Not in any order, no format, no nothing. So you're supposed to look for your name in probably 2,000 pages. Randomly, you read from name 1 to the last name looking for your name. Now, the story is, Raila's and Uru's signatures are missing. Those guys did not sign the document. The parents, the father and mother of BBI. I'll come to you after that, but let me go to Wakili first, because I want you to also draw comparison between PMK that you conducted, how it was handled, and the way IEBC has been has handled BBI, the BBI process and all that. Wakili, what's your take?
Well, BBI, I'm part of those who believe that it is, the Terry has described it as nonsense. I actually believe it is nonsense. But we know we have different views on why it is nonsense. So, first, on the IEBC verification exercise that they published yesterday.
I don't know if you allow me to pick a call. Yes. Please, just one. Then we'll take it from there. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, good morning.
This is good morning. Abdullah Mohammed calling from Mandera County.
Abdullah, salam alaikum.
Salam, habari ya wazee upande kwa studio. Now, I am following the discussion of Dr. and his colleague here, and I think Kenyans, when they talk about the slogans of politics, I don't think we need slogans. We need policies that will make Kenyans have the services they need. Now, I think Kenya is a unitary state that is run under constitutional democracy, where we have two tiers of government, the county government, the national government, and the county government. You have heard recently saying that Uhuru was behind, the president was behind the problems of Songo. He never wanted him. That is not the kind of country we need to have. It is not up to the president who becomes the governor or who doesn't, or whether he likes him or not. What needs to happen in the country is, are the people we are electing up to the task? Are they able to do what they were elected to do? I mean, do they have the quality? And I think we need to remember what Frank Happert said, that good governance never depends upon laws, but upon the personal qualities of those who govern. The machinery of government is always subordinate to the will of those who administer the machinery. The most important element of government, therefore, is the method of choosing leaders. How do we choose leaders in Kenya? Now, when you compare a city like Nairobi to that of Amsterdam, and you know, if you go to Amsterdam and you come to Nairobi, even though they are two different countries and governed by two different systems, but at least you will appreciate that the people who are in charge of Amsterdam as a city, you know, Amsterdam is run by city council, you know, the college of mayors, the underpersons, and the district. About 45 of them are elected every 5 years. And everything is at place. The train, if it's 5 minutes, cannot delay. So what is ailing Kenya, especially Nairobi, and our political system, is our political culture. The culture of the leader thinking he's doing something for us. Instead of him knowing that he was given a job and he needs to, you know, perform it with absolute certainty and professionalism. But when Sonko says he's going to bring water, it is not up to Sonko to bring water to anyone. It is him to run the systems in place so that the water can run in my house, and my responsibility is to pay the tax in my bills. It is not up to Uhuru to select who becomes the mayor as the governor of Nairobi, because that's a very big problem in our country. We are using the politics of identity. I want to say that the people who are currently running the BBI, I've said it before, BBI cannot resolve the politics of bad manners in this country. Kenya needs people who are honest, people who have integrity, people who have values, people who cannot be intimidated or coerced or told to this and that. I remember when the Senate was standing up to the presidency and the government machinery, I think the Bomet senator had injuries, Malala went through problems, the Samburu guy went through problems. Dr. EKURU AUKOT and I come from the two top poorest counties. Turkana is number 1, Mandera is number 2. What is the government doing about that? I mean, there is bandits in Pokot and in that part of the world. There is Al-Shabaab in Mandera. What are they doing about it? Nothing. Very incompetent, heavy-bodied, big belly guys who are always on our cameras. They tell us this. They spend 4 million on Mandazi and tea. How often do they think Kenyans are very stupid? So what we need in this country is the people to know that these people, including the president, is an employee under Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution. He was employed by Kenyans. Whether he stole elections or not, that's up to him or between him and Raila. It's not our business. Now he is in this presidency. Parliament has now become redundant. They have been called from State House and told what to be done. The debt ceiling, they want to take it. It's already 9 trillion or plus. The doctor knows very well. I'm not that much into it, but I think that the debt is skyrocketing. The entire money they borrowed is not borrowed in the last almost 50-something years. Children are going to laptops, and Maboy is telling us that it's okay for them to learn under trees. What about those whose classes were flooded? So I think we need to sit back and say, we do not need Ruto to tell us they are going to build 6 stadiums in 6 months or 3 months or 2 months. No, that is the work of bureaucrats. That's the work of the people who are running departmental issues or projects in the ministry. The work, those who are supposed to provide leadership. Now, Kenya's problem is the politics of identity, or rather personality. So and so, what is it that Kalonzo could not do in the last 30 years is going to do now? What is it that Musalia Mudavadi is going to do now? What is it that Ruto and Uhuru are going to do now? There is nothing new they are going to bring. BBI is just a vehicle or an instrument where someone wants to be given the presidency. Hello, Kenyans are going to vote for who they want. Right now, Uhuru and Raila's signature is already missing from IEBC. Who has removed them? The people who are so it's a country that is run by facts. This country is run by facts.
Criminals.
Criminals. It's not corruption. It is theft of public finances.
But let me ask you, Abdullah. You know, me, people keep on saying that this country is run by thugs. I agree. But my short experience doing politics and even trying to promote the Constitution Amendment, I think the problem is largely, especially as people who can analyze and sit back, we have actually been fence sitters for a long time, that these people, by the way, Abdullahi, will not care less. The moment EKURU AUKOT, Abdullahi or Kibet, Bitok steps into the political arena, that's when they wake up. But so long as we lament and complain on the sideways, trust me, they don't give a damn. They don't care.
But I know, and I agree, Dr. But I think our problem starts when Kenyatta became the president. Instead of setting the foundations for a very strong systems that are going to, help everyone, he set systems that are going to help individuals. That's why I think J.M. Kajuku was killed in 1975 when he said that Kenya is, 10 million beggars and 10 millionaires. What's the difference today? There are 10 billionaires and 50 million beggars. So I think what we need to do is not only Abdullahi and EKURU AUKOT can be members of parliament. Maybe EKURU AUKOT is going to be the governor of Turkana next. But the system, the people under you, if they are sabotaging you, because when you say that Rotich was involved in corruption, yes, I agree. It's still an allegation. An allegation will give him the benefit, of doubt. But how many people are working under him? The accountants, the financial controllers, the financial managers, the clerks, the people who are transferring this money. You do not carry billions of money using like that lady Wambura was doing with NSIS money. No, Tabura was doing. She walks into she went to a bank. NYS1. She went into a bank, walked out with sacks of money. How many people facilitated that project? You don't just accuse Kabura. It is a systemic failure in our political culture. Because if the accountant has integrity, if the bank manager has, in my community we say that 2 things, if it happens, the society is doomed. If the person who calls himself academician can be bought, if the person who calls himself learned can be cowed, using fear, as if you're going to be killed, those 2 things cannot happen to someone who is learned. There is a difference between going to school and there is a difference between being learned. Being learned, you have your own mind. I was reading Wanda Enjoyer's article the other day on Facebook where she says Kenyans accept what they were told and they talk about it. They are not criticizing things. They do not look at how to analyze this thing and then see what is it that Uhuru is going to tell us that he has not done in the last 8 years.
All right, Abdullah.
What is it that... Yes,
thank you so much, my brother. I hope to see you again on Monday, on Friday. Yeah. I'll see you again. Thank you so much for contributing. By the way, Abdullah is also a contributor. He writes on our website. So, asante sana, Abdullah. Really, thank you so much.
Good views.
Wakil, we only have 30 minutes left. So, you pick up from where you left on IBC.
Yes,
and then we'll give it back to AUKOT. Then, very quickly, tutagonga LSK tukifunga.
All right, thank you very much, Abdullah. He's given a very insightful perspective. So there's so much to say about BBI, and on especially why it is not the right constitutional amendment bill for Kenya. But I'll go direct to what you said. The verification exercise that was, that began yesterday by IEBC to verify 2,000 pages within 5 days, because I realized the deadline is 25th which is Monday. And when you look at it, I mean,
why are they giving themselves a deadline?
I think they have some pressure as well from the BBI frontiers, because I think this verification process should actually be the backbone of the BBI process in itself. So they should give Kenyans more time to verify their signatures, their ID numbers, and all that. So they've given 5 days for Kenyans to go through 2,000 pages. And mind you, not all Kenyans have access to that notice in the newspaper. Not all Kenyans have access to internet so that they can follow the link and verify whether their signatures were there. So I think in fact the right thing to do at the moment is to petition IEBC to extend that period to at the very least 3 months. Because Kenyans, these signatures were collected from every part of this country. So they said. So if signatures...
So they claim.
Yeah, so they claim. So the signatures that were collected in Kapedo, we have to confirm that this person in Kapedo who purportedly signed this BBI
in fact, you have to wait for them to finish fighting each other. Then they verify.
I hope they stop, but they have to give Kenyans time to verify their signatures. Giving them 5 days, and I know it's rather I assume it is because of the kind of pressure they have from the BBI frontiers, is not proper, and that should be challenged. And I hope Kenyans will not take that lying down. Secondly, on the issue of Uhuru's and Raila's signatures missing, our perspective as Kenyans is because we saw them signing on a screen in IEBC when they were launching it. We do not know whether they signed the books. You see? So if IEBC has gone through the books and realized that these signatures are not there, I mean, it could only be as true, because we don't know whether they signed the books. What we saw was a show. We don't know whether they signed the books. So it should not be, it's an issue of confirming. So for all you know, part of the con game is that even the frontiers that may not have endorsed it, that could be a revelation that we might see. Secondly, the signature verification, I have a very different view about the signature verification exercise, and maybe Dr. would confirm this. When the Constitution requires at least 1 million signatures, I don't think it is right to print separate books and take them for Kenyans to sign the books, and then come and relate them and say, you see, these signatures on these books invariably means that they were endorsing this particular bill. I think that goes, to the integrity of the process in terms of whether, in fact, the 4 million signatures purportedly collected from all over Kenya were actually endorsements of this particular bill. And that, I know, is a subject of a court case at the moment. But in my view, BBI is not something that will see the light of day, whether through this verification exercise or eventually through a referendum. Because I think it's a very selfish, political process that we are seeing being bulldozed into on Kenyans. And I think in good time we're able to see that Kenyans will appreciate that this, in fact, is not the best thing. Punguza Mzigo initiative, in fact, was one of the best, subject to a few amendments here and there. It was one of the best perspective in terms of, and you realize before Punguza Mzigo there was Okoa Kenya, which flopped. Mm-hmm. So one of the first successful constitutional amendments, actually the only constitutional amendment initiatives by popular initiative, was the Punguza Mzigo. And when you look at the way Punguza Mzigo was done as opposed to BBI, I think the Punguza Mzigo was more consultative, it was more involving, and it was more relatable to Kenyans. So BBI, the foundational issue about BBI goes way back to the initiative itself and the frontiers. And I don't think it's something that we should talk about. But be that as it may, I mean, we're going to see the eventualities of BBI through the verification exercise. We don't even know whether they would, meet the 1 million signatures requirement all the way to the referendum.
Okay. You pick it up from there?
Yeah, so Bitok, I think I've said it many times that game that started, with the idea of a handshake or to build bridges. But I've also asked many times, if we are saying that bridges were broken, who broke them? We must also establish that fact. Plus, I have argued before, and in many forums, that there's absolutely nothing new that can come from BBI. BBI is a tribal outfit. It is a political con game to benefit a few individuals who believe that they come from the most popular tribes. It is ongeza mizigo for Kenyans. Kenyans never wanted another additional 70 MPs. Kenyans did not want these other regional governments or whatever they want them. But anyway, I don't want to give credit to BBI by discussing it because, like I have said in the past, it is unconstitutional, it is directionless, it is amorphous, it's repetitive, it is a waste of our taxpayers' money. We are talking about spending 14 billion for a BBI referendum when we are not able to pay our doctors, our clinicians, our nurses, our teachers. It's a shame that we're even discussing about this BBI thing. Lastly, and before I come to IEBC, because I have a bone to pick with IEBC on the way they're handling this. If you want to amend the constitution of any country or write a new law for any country, you must establish one simple ingredient: the common good. What is the common good in passing a law or enacting a law or writing a new constitution? It has to benefit the general populace, not a tiny minority of individuals. You don't write laws for individuals or tribal kings. You don't. That's already a bad law. Lastly, IEBC has proved that it's actually a very weak institution. I've always supported IEBC, and I've always said that whatever weaknesses are in IEBC, they must be corrected. We must strengthen them as a constitutional body, and it must not cow itself to political pressures. When I took the Punguza Mizigo signatures to IEBC 2019, IEBC took 5 months before it started the process of verification. It created a link of the Punguza Mizigo signatures and asked Kenyans, you have got 30 days to verify whether you actually endorse this Punguza Mizigo Kenya or not. We now see IEBC changing rules in the way they are handling BBI, confirming IEBC has failed in its independence. It is bowing down to political pressure. How can you give Kenyans 5 days to check whether their name from a 5 million database or 4-point-something million database? It's a complete lie. It's a complete con. Why did IEBC take 5 months to verify to put our signatures up? Then it took another, I think, 2 months, if I'm not wrong, to actually do the actual verification of signatures. So IEBC is very biased in this case. It is part of the whole political con game, because IEBC is now looking at the politics of the stomach. Those commissioners are now looking at their own stomach, because I'm sure they have been threatened that if they don't do this, if they don't approve this, they'll be chucked out of the office.
But even the BBI itself is going to chuck them out. Yes. There's no difference.
Exactly. So
they are between a rock and a very hard place.
So Junet Mohammed has gone public to say that if they don't do ABC, they're actually influencing the mandate of an independent constitutional body. And sadly, Chairman Chebukati is admitting to this. He's a very senior lawyer at the level of a Supreme Court judge. Why is he allowing this? Why is he treating BBI differently the way he treated Punguza Mizigo Kenya? And there's another fundamental question that here we must raise the BTOC. BBI was started by 2 individuals, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Then they went into our national coffers, into our taxes as Kenyans, and funded this BBI. So that never happened with Punguza Mizigo Kenya, because my process was also about amending the Constitution of Kenya, but it was never funded from the public. So why is BBI being funded from the public when it is a wish of 2 individuals to amend the Constitution of Kenya? Can you imagine today if you are Wakili Kibet also, or even yourself, Bitok?
What we need to shake hands. Nobody has a monopoly of handshake.
Exactly.
They have the taxes fund.
No,
handshake.
we can shake hands, and we can even propose a constitutional amendment. Should we also be funded by taxpayers' money?
Now, maybe we get funded by taxpayers' money. We all enjoy it.
Exactly. In fact, for that reason, I'm actually relaunching Punguza Mizigo.
Please. Rudisha Punguza Mizigo to his
Narudisha, by the way. So you can see the way BBI is doing. And by the way, let's even look at the benefits of BBI. If you look at, for example, what we had proposed as Punguza Mizigo, we wanted actually to end corruption and save money. We are going to save about 3-point-something trillion Kenya shillings. just from corruption alone. We are going to cut the number of our representatives because we don't need this many members of parliament. BBI is saying, let's increase more members of parliament. BBI is lying to Kenyans that you will now get 35%.
When they can't afford 15%.
When they cannot afford 15%. And remember, the language in the constitution is absolutely crystal clear that at least 15%. Nothing has stopped the president from even saying, I'm going to give counties 50%.
Even 50% is possible.
The constitution says at least. So you don't need to amend the constitution to give Kenyans tax rebates, tax holidays. You don't need to amend the constitution to give Kenyans a relief on how to repay the HELB, the Higher Education Loans Board. You don't need to amend the constitution. Most of the things in BBI, most, if not all, are purely administrative,
and policy
legislative,
issues,
and policy.
All right. Yeah. LSK, what's going on at the LSK?
Law Society of Kenya is, well, it's a shamble between the officials. The society as it is, I mean, it's strong. The members, we are okay. But I think this is not a new thing. If you look back at it. Are you fine
or you're just okay?
Okay. No, I mean, even you remember when the previous council had issues amongst the officials. But the society in itself, is still strong. And I think this is something we've seen over time. It's an internal problem amongst the officials, not lawyers actually, amongst the officials that were elected by lawyers to the council. And you see these people were elected from, everyone ran on their own policy. And when they sit in council, it's very likely, although we expect them to work together, but we see difference in opinions and difference in the manner in which they want to conduct themselves and run the Law Society of Kenya as a society. So I think it's those are internal issues. It's best, known to the people who are fighting themselves. They are actually personal to some level, because when you see them addressing each other, they talk about it's a character problem.
I saw someone was sitting on Avi's notebook and laptop.
Yeah, I saw the ugly photos.
Quite literally.
Yeah, I saw the ugly photos of the special general meeting. I was among those who were following online. So I think it's a from what I see, it's a character problem amongst the leaders themselves, and that should not be a national problem as it is. It should just be something to be solved through emotional intelligence at the very least, because these are people who should be able to conduct themselves and relate in a manner in which they understand that they are leaders of a very dignified society. But it's not a big deal. I think this is something that it's quite small, considering the kind of problems we have in this country right now.
So we can forgive that. Yeah. All right, EKURU, Section 4.
I want to talk about Section 4 of our Law Society of Kenya.
And actually, it's quite interesting. You remember the other time when Avi was really fuming and he was saying he was going to close Parliament. Then he went akaambia wabunge habari zenu marafiki zangu, nilikuja tu tukunywa chai tuko na maneno. He actually yelled and went back.
Whether they actually played that mandate or not, there is actually a statutory body under the Law Society of Kenya Act. And some of the mandate of the Law Society of Kenya Act, which are really in danger because of these wrangles and infighting, are the following. If you read that section 4 of the LSK Act, which is really about the objects of the society, they include to assist the government and the courts in all matters affecting legislation and administration and practice of the law in Kenya. Now, with all this infighting, how are we able to assist the government, especially if the government goes amok on some of the things they're doing? Like even right now, the problem with the Nairobi Metropolitan, the problem with insecurity. But most importantly, the Law Society of Kenya has a role in to protect and assist the public in Kenya in all matters touching ancillary to or incidental to the law. So it has a huge mandate, and there are many objects. So when you see this infighting in the Law Society of Kenya, first of all, we actually lose the ethics of the profession itself, the professionalism, the outlook with which people look at us as lawyers, that we're supposed to be people who conduct ourselves with certain decorum. And I see the Law Society of Kenya in very recent years has become worse than political parties, especially during campaigns time. You'll expect that professional legal minds will not go around bribing people, buying people booze and mbuzi to be voted. It's worse. Actually, we've lost in the etiquette of the legal profession. And what's happening at the LSK, for me, is very unfortunate. But there are certain issues that we don't also want to sweep under the carpet. There are serious allegations of money disappearing. These are members' money. And people who are opposed to audit of the accounts, for me, are wrong. We must audit our accounts of the Law Society of Kenya. We must establish the money that we pay to the Society of Kenya is safe and supposed to serve members. So the wrangles is political. Many times you can see that there are factions now in the Law Society of Kenya. There are those who are allied to actually political parties, by the way. There are factions that are known to be pro, I don't know, ODM, some Jubilee, some other political parties. It's unfortunate that we are losing our professionalism. The etiquette of the legal profession is being thrown away because of these wrangles. And I really, in the eyes of the public, how can the public rely on us to protect them and assist them on matters law if we behave like this? So my appeal to my president, Nelson Harvey, and the other council members is that I think it's important that I actually sit down and just reflect on the role that you ought to play in this country, and particularly look at the objects of the Law Society under Section 4 of the LSK Act.
And maybe they should stay away from politics. I could be wrong.
I mean, they should stay away from politics because our government,
because I think it's becoming too.
Our guidance is professional, professional ethics, the etiquette of the legal profession. It's nothing to do with politics.
Because I've been noticing there is it looks like even within the LSK there is the Kieleweka and Tangatanga politics in between. I think I've taken up some notice of that.
Yeah, which is informed by, like Dr. Area said, ODM and Jubilee affiliations within the council leadership. It's bound to happen because these people they run on a political platform, and because he said, we have there's some sort of campaign that has now affected the Law Society where there's a lot of money spent, and that informs the consequences of spending so much money in an election. It prompts the candidates to seek money from elsewhere. So when they get sponsors from the political terrain,
then they have to
give back allegiance.
Yeah, so they have to dance to the tune of whoever finances.
Actually, it becomes a bit very difficult for us as lawyers or a professional body to criticize government. Because you cannot criticize government or even parliament, because government and parliament is made of politicians, So when we also behave like them, or probably even worse than them, because then people expect of us to behave in a certain...
You lack the moral ground.
With a certain decorum. We lack the moral authority to be able now to criticize the government of President Uhuru when they disrespect, the constitution or court orders, when we ourselves are not even respecting our own, governance structure. So that's the unfortunate. And LSK is very central even in the governance of this country.
Okay. Yeah. And you see, like you said, for the longest time, I think for the last 2 years, LSK has been calling on the government to obey court orders and the rule of law. Now we have a situation where people who champion the government in disobeying court orders are telling us, but even you guys are not obeying your own rules and regulations. So we have now become a comparative analysis between, disobeying rules and regulations.
And there are members of the Law Society of Kenya, by the way, who even sit in some of the disciplinary, tribunals or committees of political parties like Jubilee and others. And then there's always this clamor for appointment into the boards, government boards and stuff. People fight about such things, which for me, I think the Law Society of Kenya actually ought to distance itself from such appointments, because the moment you are appointed by government, and normally these appointments are from either the council members themselves or some of their cronies. So that begins a process of compromising the mandate of the Law Society or its authority to hold government into account. And whether someone like Harvey, stands up against government or the regime, he stands isolated. And that's why you can actually see the division. I don't know why professionals cannot sit down and agree the way we in court. Kibet and I don't have to be enemies just because we are representing different parties before a court of law. I advance my client's cause, he advances his client's cause, and then the judge magistrate makes the decision. Me and him don't have split hairs about such.
All right. Wakil, your tackle of the day.
Well, principally is this, and I should have said this during this BBI analysis. The rule of law in this country is extremely in a bad state, where we have the President of the Republic of Kenya has refused to swear in the now 40 judges, because one has since passed on. We have a number of court orders that have been issued by court that have been deliberately disobeyed by the government. We have a situation, going back to Miguna's issues, to the now judges issue, and many other court orders that have been disobeyed. it is important for us to look at the perspective of the rule of law in terms of, if you correlate with this BBI, the champions of changing the constitutions are the champions of disobeying court orders. And Kenyans must look at it the way it is, that we should protect the rule of law jealously, because only then can our country be built on constitutionalism and the principles of the rule of law, which should be able to guide and protect every Kenyan in accordance with the constitution. Once we compromise on that, once we don't say anything about, or even when the court pronounces itself on the mandate of the president and many other factions of government, and the pronouncements of the courts are despised, the eventuality is that we have a situation where we live in a society where there's basically anarchy. So I think Kenyans should see through these political processes of changing the constitution and call for the rule of law.
Right. Thank you. Aukot, your tackle.
I'll say two things. First of all, because of the situation back in my village in Kapedo, I will just say this to the government of Kenya. Make yourself present in every part of the republic of this country. Treat all Kenyans equally. The reason government has failed in Kenya is now the reason why even their own police officers are being killed in my village, Kapedo. It's a shame. I think this has to change. Secondly, I just want to say that this is my appeal to all Kenyans, especially to those who are in the know, that we should all wake up and smell the coffee. The way the country is being chaperoned towards 2022 is not looking good. The priorities of this country, of our government, is upside down. I think we should begin by all standing up and rejecting this BBI nonsense, the apportionment of huge billions of Kenya shillings to this referendum process that is not helping us. We should refocus and call on government to focus on the most important things. We have learned from the COVID pandemic that we now must prioritize our healthcare system. We must now prioritize put in proper infrastructure so that it doesn't disrupt education. We must now prioritize technology, because now technology has become almost a basic need. We must prioritize the plight of doctors and nurses, the frontline soldiers during this pandemic. I think we need to all stand up and say, what are our priorities going forward? Our priority now going forward is not 2022 elections. It's actually the things that make us humane, that make us live as Kenyans. And that has to do with healthcare system, education, and employment, and all that. Reviving the economy. I know many people today who are actually suffering, being auctioned. In fact, the auctioneers cannot even find people to buy, stuff, because the situation is just bad. I think we need to ask ourselves the question, what really are our priority as a country today? Is it the politics of 2022? Is it BBI? Or really about us living as human beings in a humane way in a country we call Kenya? And let's reject divisive politics.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in. To see you again. EKURU, this is your show, Friday. Nakuja. So, karibu sana wakili. We would love to see you more often. We can continue dissecting these issues of the nation. We hope you're going to make this country better. A conversation at a time. All right. I'm saying jobless. Joby says, what is in this document, in this BBI documents, that is making one wing of the political device to push so much? This makes all of process suspicious. John Jegi is saying he had a technical problem. Karibu sana. Technical shinda kwako huko. Wilson Tuwa says enjoying the debate. Asante sana. Nel Sheps Murai, BBI is a total scam. Abbas Njuguna, how do we trust guys telling us to support amendment for a constitution which they are not currently implementing? So Alanyeti. Festus Lordman, I'm watching from Kapedo. At least you guys can still access Facebook. Thank you so much. Tuambia what this situation is on the ground.
Just before we finish, I just got a message that courts have again surrounded the whole village and have started burning fences.
Sad. Watu wa Kapedo wacheni ujinga. Very sad. Ruta Maxilo Chwaka zama Ruta should have opposed this BBI. He would have supported the Aslas and would have gained so much popularity. Sasa tumeachia Aukot amesema anarudisha punguza mzigo. Emmanuel Kibetet anasema no to BBI. Steven Kibetet Sergon anasema safi sana ako pale Vancouver. Kana David Maru, happy new year and welcome back. We talking team. Thank you so much. Eva JK Boy anasema good morning to you. Abbas Njuguna, signatures will mysteriously find their way into the books today if this was an Wera. All right, guys, thank you so much for the tacklers who have joined us. It is a pleasure to have you. It is always a pleasure to have you. I hope to see you again on Monday. Keep suggesting, keep sharing the broadcast even after we've done. Endelea kusukuma, share, and also go to our YouTube page. Then after General Bitok on Twitter, also General Bitok on #THETACKLE, utupate pale tuweze kusukuma kazi pamoja. We love you, and we hope to see you again on Monday. Bye bye and take care. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.